Imagine, like you're standing at the base of the Alps. It is freezing. The peaks are jagged, completely impassable. The wind is just howling. The temperature is plummeting. And you have 40,000 exhausted, freezing men behind you.
Yeah, and not just men. Right.
You also have actual, literal war elephants just shivering in the snow.
Which is still so crazy to think about.
It's wild. And on the other side of these mountains, the entire Roman Empire, like the most ruthless, well-oiled military machine on Earth, wants you dead.
Definitely.
To any normal person. I mean, to any rational human being, this is a logistical nightmare. It's a suicide mission. But the Hannibal Barca, standing in the snow, looking up at those peaks, this was just, the opening move in a game of four-dimensional psychological chess.
It really is the ultimate subversion of what we usually think of when we picture ancient warfare. Because we have this deeply ingrained Hollywood image of blunt force, like two massive armies line up on a flat, muddy field. They crash together, metal against metal, and the guy with the biggest muscles and the most swords left standing is the winner.
Right, because it's a numbers game. It feels, clean.
Exactly. It's quantifiable. But when you step into the mind of ancient Carthage's greatest general, that entire numbers game is just thrown completely out the window.
Thrown right out.
Hannibal didn't fight on a flat board. He fought on a board that was constantly tilting, where the pieces weren't made of carved wood or iron. They were made of human emotions: paranoia, ego, fear, ambition.
So welcome to this custom-tailored deep dive. Today we're immersing ourselves in a piece of source material that completely shattered my understanding of strategy.
It's a really intense read.
It is. It's called The Black Art of War. Hannibal's 99 Truths, compiled and analyzed by James W. Peterson III. And our mission for this deep dive is to basically extract the ruthless, brilliant, and honestly kind of uncomfortably practical mindset of an apex predator.
Uncomfortable is definitely the right word for it.
Yeah, we're going to figure out exactly how the strategies of a man who, crossed the Alps on elephants translate directly to your modern life. Whether you are navigating a high-stakes boardroom negotiation, dealing with a toxic competitor in your industry, or just facing down a massive personal struggle that feels insurmountable.
And right out of the gate, we really have to confront the central glaring paradox of this text.
The big contradiction.
Yeah, because the source material is steeped in ancient, bloody, brutal battleground scenarios. Men dying in the mud, empires burning. Yet the core argument running through these 99 truths is that 51% of any battle, like any conflict whatsoever, is entirely mental.
51%. That is such a specific, audacious claim.
It really is.
He's basically saying that more than half the battle is definitively won or lost before a single physical blow is struck. Or, in our world, before a single word is even spoken in a pitch meeting.
Because true victory, according to Hannibal, it doesn't happen in the physical realm first. It happens in the architecture of the mind.
Right.
His truths are deeply introspective. They aren't just a list of ways to ambush a Roman legion. They're a masterclass in understanding the hidden, often quite ugly levers of human psychology.
So true.
It's about mapping your own vulnerabilities so no one can exploit them, and then reading your opponent so perfectly that you can just manipulate their reality. And perhaps, most controversially, it's about realizing why you should actually genuinely be grateful for the people who are trying to destroy you.
Which is a wildly counterintuitive idea. But to understand how someone arrives at a philosophy like that, we can't just look at the tactics, right? We have to look at the crucible that forged the strategy.
Absolutely. You don't just get a Hannibal Barca in a vacuum.
Exactly. You get him out of intense geopolitical friction and, honestly, massive generational trauma.
The historical backdrop here is so essential. We're looking at the 3rd century BC, and the Mediterranean world is essentially this massive powder keg defined by the Punic Wars.
Right. Rome versus Carthage.
Yeah. On one side, you have Rome. And Rome is this rapidly expanding, incredibly aggressive, militaristic European powerhouse. Their entire identity is tied up in infantry conquest.
And then on the other side, you have Carthage. And I think people often kind of misunderstand what Carthage was.
Oh, they definitely. Yeah.
Because this wasn't just some rival army camp. This was a spectacularly wealthy, sophisticated African city-nation located in modern-day Tunisia.
Yep.
They were the undisputed rulers of the Mediterranean Sea, like commercial kingpins. They had trade routes stretching from Egypt all the way up to the British Isles and down the west coast of Africa. I mean, they were the New York and London of the ancient world rolled into one.
They were entirely defined by naval supremacy and economic dominance. And Rome, looking across the water, became deeply paranoid and just profoundly jealous of that wealth.
Right, it was inevitable.
The conflict wasn't just likely, it was biologically inevitable, like you said. Two apex predators in a confined ecosystem. Carthage controlled the sea, and Rome decided they wanted it. But there was a massive asymmetry in their capabilities.
Because Rome's infantry, the famous Roman legions, were completely unmatched on dry land.
Unmatched. But they couldn't touch Carthage on the water. Carthaginian ships were sleek, incredibly fast, and maneuverable. They could easily sail circles around Roman transports, ram them, and sink them without ever engaging in hand-to-hand combat.
But here's where the story takes a turn that perfectly illustrates the kind of relentless, adaptive enemy Carthage was actually dealing with. Rome doesn't just shrug and say, well, we're bad at sailing, let's stick to the land.
No, they don't give up that easily.
Right. During the First Punic War, a Carthaginian warship accidentally runs aground on Italian shores. It gets stuck.
Such a massive mistake.
The Romans find it, they capture it, and what do? They don't just burn it, they painstakingly reverse engineer the entire vessel. They take it apart plank by plank to understand the hydrodynamics.
And crucially, they don't just create a one-to-one copy, they innovate.
Yeah.
They look at their own supreme strength, which is infantry, and they look at the Carthaginian ship, and they invent a bridge between the two. Literally. They invent a device called a corvus.
The Raven.
Exactly, the Raven. It was a massive, heavy, wooden gangplank with a huge iron spike at the end. They attached these to the bows of their new reverse-engineered fleet. Now, when a Roman ship gets close to a fast Carthaginian vessel, they don't even try to outmaneuver them.
Because they know they can't.
Right. Instead, they just drop this massive spiked bridge directly onto the enemy deck. The spike bites into the wood, locking the two ships together.
And just like that, they've turned a sophisticated naval ballet into a brutal infantry brawl.
They literally brought the land war to the sea.
They changed the physics of the battlefield to suit their specific talents.
It's wild. It's a brilliant, terrifying adaptation. And because of the corvus, Carthage's naval advantage is totally neutralized, and they are ultimately defeated in the First Punic War. Which brings us to the inciting incident of Hannibal's entire life. His father, Hamilcar Barca.
Right, Hamilcar.
Hamilcar was the top Carthaginian commander. He was an undefeated general fighting a guerrilla war on the ground in Sicily. But he is forced by the politicians back home in Carthage to surrender because the navy failed to supply him.
So he has to swallow defeat he didn't even personally earn.
Exactly. He returns to Carthage completely humiliated.
Humiliated and just utterly enraged. And Rome doesn't just ask for a handshake and an apology.
Yeah.
The surrender terms they dictate are designed to be suffocating.
Oh, they were brutal.
Devastating war indemnities, heavy taxes, loss of crucial territories, and crippling restrictions on Carthage's military and trade capabilities. Rome's goal wasn't just to win. It was to choke the life out of Carthage slowly over decades.
And this environment of profound humiliation leads to one of the most pivotal psychological moments in military history.
The blood oath.
The blood oath. Hamilcar takes his 4 young sons, Hannibal being only about 9 years old at the time, into the grand temple of their supreme god, Baal. 9 years old?
Just a kid. The atmosphere is thick with incense, shadow, and the weight of a dying empire. Hamilcar draws his sword. And the text emphasizes that this isn't just a standard issue military blade.
No, it's a relic.
The sword is a sacred relic. It has been passed down through generations, its lineage allegedly tracing all the way back to Queen Dido, the legendary founder of Carthage, and before that, to the ashes of the fallen city of Troy.
Wow.
It is the literal physical embodiment of their heritage and their historical grievances against the West.
So it's not just a weapon, it's an anchor to their entire civilization's trauma.
Precisely. It's the weight of history in a piece of metal. Hamilcar makes his 9-year-old son place his hand on this sword and swear a solemn, unbreakable blood oath that he will never, ever be a friend to Rome, that he will harbor internal hatred for them.
That is heavy.
From that exact moment, Hannibal's destiny is locked. The trajectory of his entire life is decided before he even hits puberty. He is forged in that specific fire of vengeance, and the rest of his life is just a testament to that oath. He grows up, moves to Spain, meticulously builds a massive mercenary army totally out of Roman oversight, and then pulls off The impossible march we talked about at the beginning.
The march over the Alps.
Right. He completely bypasses the Roman coastal defenses. He takes his army and those famous elephants right over the freezing Alps, suffering horrific casualties, just to attack Italy from the north, where they least expect it.
It was a logistical nightmare that the Roman Senate deemed mathematically and geographically impossible. You just do not march an army through the Alps in winter.
But he did it.
He did. And for the next 16 years, Hannibal rampages up and down the Italian peninsula, slaughtering Roman armies in their own backyard, completely dismantling the aura of Roman invincibility.
But, and this is where I really want to push back on the premise of the text, look at how the story ends. Despite all those brilliant victories, Hannibal never actually takes the city of Rome.
That's true.
He's eventually recalled back to Africa to defend Carthage, and he is definitively defeated at the Battle of Zama. And who defeats him? Scipio Africanus, a Roman general who literally spent his entire adult life obsessively studying Hannibal's own tactics just to beat him.
Scipio essentially reverse-engineered Hannibal's mind, the same way Rome reverse-engineered the Carthaginian ship generations earlier.
Exactly. And then look at Hannibal's final years. He's in exile. He's 64 years old, constantly running from Roman assassins, moving from court to court in the east.
It's a sad end.
It really is. Finally, when he's surrounded and realizes he's going to be captured and paraded in chains through Rome, he takes his own life. And he does it with his father's sword, the exact same sword from the blood oath in the temple.
Full circle.
So my question is this. If your entire life, from the time you were a 9-year-old child to your literal dying breath at 64, is defined by a singular oath of hatred toward an external enemy, doesn't that just make you a prisoner to your enemy?
That is a fascinating way to look at it.
I mean, I'm thinking about modern equivalents. Think about deep-seated family feuds that span generations, or massive corporate rivalries like when a CEO becomes so obsessed with destroying a specific competitor that they completely lose sight of their own company's innovation and drive it into the ground.
Right, they get tunnel vision.
If you frame your entire psychology around someone else's destruction, doesn't that inherently limit you? Did his strategy actually fail?
That is the perfect critique, and it really strikes at the absolute core tension of the 99 Truths. Is he a prisoner of Rome, or is he empowered by that singular, laser-like focus?
Yeah.
To our modern sensibilities, it sounds like he was drafted into his father's PTSD. It sounds like a tragic waste. But the text argues forcefully that Hannibal did not view his enemies as a prison. He viewed them as a gym.
A gym.
Yeah, he saw them as the ultimate sharpening stone. This is the philosophical bedrock of Truth 1 and Truth the Sixth.
Okay, let's look at the mechanics of Truth the Sixth because it's fascinating. Hannibal writes that a warrior is known by his enemies. And then he says something that feels entirely backwards. He says you must give thanks for your enemy.
Right. Give thanks.
He explicitly states that without his enemy, he would sleep past dawn, he would eat too much, he would grow soft, lethargic, and overproud.
The author draws a brilliant biological and psychological analogy here. He says, tropical fish in a barren bowl remain lethargic until you place a rock in it.
The enemy is the rock.
Exactly. Without friction, there is no evolution. Complacency is the natural resting state of any successful organism or organization. If you don't have a predator, your muscles atrophy. Hannibal states in Truth Ethic that we are made as much by our enemies as by our ambitions. The friction is the point.
It's a total psychological reframe. Instead of whining about how hard your competition is making your life or how unfair the market is, you actively thank them for forcing you to be excellent. You need them to keep your blade sharp.
Exactly. And the source text brings in an incredible historical parallel to illustrate how this principle of weaponizing your environment works in practice. The story of Toussaint Louverture.
This is one of the most compelling examples in the book. Louverture is born into slavery in the French colony of Saint-Domingue, or what is now Haiti. He is born into an environment designed entirely to crush him.
A literal system of absolute oppression. But what's fascinating is how he approaches his Roman Empire, so to speak. He doesn't just rebel blindly in a fit of rage. He understands that blind rage is structurally useless against a well-oiled military machine.
Right.
So when the geopolitical situation shifts and an opportunity arises, he actually joins the French military. He embeds himself inside the exact system that enslaved him.
He puts on the uniform of his oppressor. Think about the cognitive dissonance and the sheer emotional control required to do that.
It's a myth.
He embraces the grueling environment. He lets them train him. He learns the master's art of war from the inside out. He learns how they organize logistics, how they manage supply lines, how they structure their strategic thinking, how they enforce discipline. He essentially downloads their entire operating system into his own mind.
It is a masterclass in operational patience. He spends years gathering this intelligence. And then with infinite care, he uses that exact training to organize and build a secret, highly disciplined army right under their noses.
Wow.
He doesn't build a disorganized mob. He builds a mirror image of the French military engine, but fueled by the desire for liberation.
And he ultimately overthrows the French, entirely shattering their control and establishing an independent Haiti, which, as the text rightly points out, had massive world-altering geopolitical ripple effects.
The ripple effects were staggering. The loss of Haiti, which was France's most profitable colony, drained Napoleon's financial and military resources so severely that it indirectly forced him to abandon his ambitions in the Americas.
Which is huge.
It forced France to sell the Louisiana Purchase to the United States. Think about that causality. One man, born into slavery, using the intense friction of his enemies to forge his own intellect and weaponize his patience, literally changed the geographical map of the modern world.
It makes you look at your own life differently, you know? Think about your own environment. Who is the Roman Empire in your career right now? Who is the rock in your fishbowl?
It's a great question to ask yourself.
Is it a massive rival business that keeps undercutting your prices and stealing your clients? Is it a toxic, hyper-demanding boss who constantly undermines you? Or maybe it's a societal limitation, a barrier you've been explicitly told you don't have the pedigree or the resources to cross. Hannibal's framework demands that you stop looking at them as an excuse for your failure and start looking at them as the free training program for your success.
Identifying that enemy, that source of friction, is step one. But we have to circle back to your earlier point about not becoming a prisoner to them. How do you actually feed off this adversarial energy without letting the hatred consume and blind you?
Yeah, how do you balance that?
Well, the text is incredibly careful to warn against hot-blooded, unrefined hatred.
Because blind hatred makes you predictable. And if you are predictable, you are easy to kill.
Yeah.
If you're just blindly striking out at your rival because you are angry, you are being manipulated by them. They are dictating your actions.
Exactly.
Which leads us perfectly into the mechanics of Hannibal's strategy. Once you accept that you biologically and psychologically need your enemies to grow, how do you actually go about dismantling them? It starts with human motivation. You have to know exactly what makes people tick, starting with yourself, so you don't become the unwitting pawn in someone else's game.
This brings us to Hannibal's 4 pillars that support a man's house. The text lays them out as the foundational architecture of human vulnerability.
What are they?
What a man loves, what he hates, what he needs, and what he desires. If you can accurately map these 4 pillars within a person, you understand their structural integrity. You know exactly which load-bearing wall to kick to make the entire house collapse.
And it's vital to distinguish between these pillars, specifically the difference between needs and desires. The text brings in a profound realization from the Buddha here, which is fascinating to pair with the philosophy of an ancient African warlord.
It's a great pairing.
The Buddha realized the immense danger of confusing wants, our endless desires, with our true needs. The source text drops this incredibly sharp line. Wallet and want have to balance.
It's a profound structural truth. The text notes that the more a man possesses, the more easily he can be possessed by others.
Oh, that's good.
Right. If you desire 100 different luxuries, an enemy has 100 different levers they can pull to distract you, entice you, or trap you. You have 100 open windows for a hacker to exploit. But if your needs are few, if you strip away the excess desires, you are virtually unbribable. You become invulnerable because there's nothing they can offer you that you care about.
Hannibal expands on this psychological mapping with his 6 movers of men. He categorizes the foundational drives that make men willing to fight and die: blood, glory, gold, sport, love, and honor.
And what's brilliant is how he breaks down the fatal flaw in almost all of them.
Yeah.
Men who fight for gold are blinded by shiny things. They are mercenaries of the mind. You can literally lure them into a geographical trap just by leaving a chest of coins on the road.
True.
Men who fight for glory are driven by ego. They take stupid theatrical risks because they want to be seen, and they usually die before they ever hear the victory songs. Men who fight for blood, for pure, unrefined vengeance, find it dripping from their own hearts because rage makes them sloppy.
But the man who fights for honor cannot be led astray. Honor, in Hannibal's specific context, isn't about some romanticized chivalry. It is about rigid internal discipline and an unbreakable adherence to a personal code, regardless of external temptations or terrors.
Yes.
If you don't deeply understand your own pillars and what your primary mover is, I guarantee your enemy will figure them out and play you like a fiddle. I can't help but compare this ancient mapping to modern technology. Think about social media algorithms. What is TikTok or Twitter actually doing? It is mapping your 4 pillars in real time.
Oh, that's a perfect analogy.
Right. It figures out what you love. Maybe it's dog rescue videos. It figures out what you hate. A specific political ideology. It figures out what you desire. Lifestyle envy, luxury travel. It tests your flank by showing you a video. If you watch it for 3 seconds, it has found a weakness.
It learns you.
And once the algorithm maps your pillars, it feeds you a constant, weaponized stream of content, specifically designed to hijack your dopamine, to keep you enraged, to keep you scrolling. It manipulates your behavior invisibly.
That is a terrifying and perfectly accurate mechanical analogy. The algorithm is applying the 99 truths at scale.
Exactly. If a string of code can manipulate your emotional state that easily, just by observing your pillars, imagine what a savvy business competitor, a manipulative colleague, or a toxic partner could do if they read you that well. If you don't know that your desire for validation is your weak pillar, someone else is going to use it to own you.
Which transitions us to the next crucial layer of strategy. If understanding the 4 pillars allows you to read your enemy's mind and map their algorithm, the very next step is aggressively controlling what they see in yours.
Oh, deception.
You must become an illusionist. This is the core of Hannibal's mastery of psychological warfare and deception.
Let's get into the mechanics of deception. Hannibal talks extensively about the crucial difference between looking and seeing. He argues that seeing only what the enemy shows you makes you their absolute fool. If you are taking things at face value, if you believe the press release, you are already losing.
He advocates for gathering real, unfiltered intelligence. But true intelligence isn't just about raw brain power or having more data. It's about active, cynical observation. It's noticing the micro-expressions in a negotiation, the things explicitly left unsaid in an email, the negative space in an opponent's strategy.
The stuff beneath the surface.
Exactly. But here is the critical pivot. While you are aggressively gathering real-time intel on them, you have to be projecting a completely false manufactured reality back to them.
A text calls out the nature of secrets beautifully. It says, secrets bleed like blood.
Right. You cannot simply try to quietly hide a secret in a dark room. Because eventually the truth leaks out, people talk, a document is left on a desk, evidence slips.
Humans are nosy.
They are. The human brain is naturally inquisitive. If it senses you are hiding something, it will dig. So the best way to hide a secret isn't silence, it's noise. It's displaying a false reality so incredibly convincing, so loud and obvious and neatly packaged that the enemy's brain simply accepts it and completely stops looking for the underlying truth. You give them a story they want to believe.
This brings us to what might be my favorite concept in the entire text, the drunken man strategy. Hannibal says, I stagger left and my enemy laughs at the drunken man. Suddenly, I strike right.
It's so vivid.
The psychology here is brilliant. You deliberately appear weak, confused, disorganized, or incompetent precisely when you are actually strong and prepared. You actively feed their ego. You make them feel superior, which makes them overconfident, which makes them drop their guard.
And we see this historically executed in Hannibal's own campaigns with devastating effect. The text shares an incredible anecdote about sensory illusion. Hannibal's army is trapped at night in a valley. The Romans hold the high ground in the exits. They think they have him completely boxed in. It's over.
So what does he do?
He gathers a massive herd of cattle, has his men tie bundles of dry wood and torches to the horns of the animals, lights them on fire, and stampedes the herd in one direction up a hill through the darkness.
The sensory experience for the Romans is overwhelming. They are standing in the dark, they look across the valley, and they see thousands of torches moving erratically up a ridge. Their brains immediately fill in the gaps. Oh, it's a massive Carthaginian army trying to break out. They panic, they break formation, and they rush to intercept the torches.
Meanwhile, Hannibal quietly slips his actual, highly disciplined army out through the now undefended exit in the opposite direction. He didn't just hide, he actively showed them exactly what they expected to see. A frantic, desperate night movement. And they fell for the illusion completely.
The source text gives other amazing historical echoes of this exact psychological hack. Take Cleopatra, the African queen of Egypt. She's in a precarious geopolitical position and desperately needs to bypass a heavy security blockade to secure a face-to-face meeting with Julius Caesar.
Such a classic story.
She doesn't try to fight her way in with guards. She doesn't send diplomats to argue. She uses her deep understanding of Roman vanity and their cultural expectations of conquered nations. She has herself rolled up inside an incredibly expensive ornate rug and has it delivered past the guards as a subservient gift to Caesar.
The guards see a tribute, they see submission, their egos are stroked, so they let it through.
Exactly. And when the rug is unrolled in Caesar's private quarters, out pops the Queen of Egypt. She manipulated a massive physical military threat into an intimate political alliance entirely through sheer theatrical deception. She played the drunken man, or in this case the passive object, to strike right into the center of Roman power.
We see the exact same mechanical principle centuries later in the boxing ring with Muhammad Ali's famous rope-a-dope against George Foreman.
Oh, that's a great example.
Ali leaned back on the ropes, covering his face, looking completely exhausted, taking heavy body blows, letting Foreman punch himself out. Foreman looked at Ali, saw a beaten, tired man, and his ego took over. He got overconfident. He abandoned his pacing and his strategy, swinging wildly for the knockout.
But Ali wasn't beaten.
No, Ali was perfectly fine. He was just absorbing the energy, playing the drunken man, waiting for the exact moment Foreman's arms got heavy and the trap snapped shut. Or look at Shaka Zulu's legendary cow's horn formation. The center of the Zulu army would deliberately break and feign a panicked, disorganized retreat.
Staggering left.
Exactly. The opposing army, thinking they've won, breaks their own discipline lines to rush forward in pursuit. Only then do the horns, the hidden flanks of the Zulu army, encircle and crush the overextended enemy from the sides.
So let's bring this out of the ancient battlefield and into the modern office. Here's a practical challenge for you listening. How do you actually use the drunken man strategy in a professional setting without just permanently damaging your own reputation? If you're in a critical salary negotiation or you're pitching to a board of directors, how do you mask your strength and feed their ego without looking so incompetent that they just fire you?
This is where the nuance of the drunken man is vital. It isn't about appearing purely globally incompetent. That's just self-sabotage. It's about appearing predictable or narrowly safely focused on the wrong thing.
Right.
Let's take a complex contract negotiation. Maybe you feign extreme, almost irrational concern over a minor, relatively inconsequential detail in the contract. You stagger left, you argue passionately about it, you let the other party push back, and finally, you concede. You let them win that minor point, you make them feel powerful, you let them feel like the smartest, toughest negotiators in the room.
But get the dopamine hit of dominating you.
Exactly. Their ego is satiated, they relax, they drop their guard. And that is the exact moment you pivot and secure the core financial terms or the equity stake you actually cared about all along striking right. You deliberately lose the battle of ego so you can definitively win the war of substance.
But here is the massive, fatal flaw with the drunken man strategy. You can stagger left to fake out your boss all day long, but if you don't have the emotional control to wait for them to fully drop their guard before you strike right, you just look like an idiot who stumbled. If Ali comes off the ropes 3 rounds too early, Foreman just knocks his head off.
Perfect.
Deception requires an almost sociopathic level of patience. You have to be comfortable looking like a loser for a long time.
Which is why Hannibal's warfare is held together by 2 binding agents. Extreme, painful patience and the psychological weight of fear.
Yeah, those are huge.
Truths XC7 through XXX are explicit about the mechanics of time. He writes, impatience has slain more men than the best of bowmen, and crucially, he notes that fear spills less blood.
Let's look at how patience works as a weapon. The text provides the story of the African prince Jugurtha and his brutal war with Rome. Jugurtha was brilliant because he understood that time was his greatest asset. He didn't just fight the Romans on a battlefield, he bought them.
He had a lot of money.
He used his immense wealth to continuously bribe the Roman Senate, famously and mockingly calling Rome a city up for sale.
Jugurtha was a master of the slow bleed. He understood that the Roman war machine was designed for quick, decisive, brutal infantry engagements. They wanted to march out, crush you, and go home. So Jugurtha simply refused to give them that.
Frustrating them.
Deeply. He frustrated the Roman commander Albinus by using endless guerrilla tactics, hit and runs, fading into the desert, absolutely refusing to fight a pitched battle. He dragged the conflict out until the Roman supply lines and morale were stretched to the breaking point. He eventually trapped and exhausted Albinus and forced his surrendered Roman legions to march under African spears, which was a massive, calculated psychological humiliation. He used patience to rot the Roman structure from the inside.
But Jugurtha's ultimate downfall proves Hannibal's point about impatience perfectly. After years of brilliant strategy, Jugurtha was eventually defeated. But not because he was outgeneraled on the battlefield.
No, it was a political mistake.
Right. He was defeated due to a sudden lack of patience in his diplomatic alliances. He sought refuge with his ally, King Bocchus, and tried to force Bocchus to commit fully to the war against Rome before Bocchus was ready. He pushed the timeline. And Bocchus, feeling pressured and seeing a better deal, betrayed Jugurtha and handed him over to the Romans in chains.
Ouch.
Jugurtha forced the issue too quickly with an ally whose loyalty wasn't fully cemented. His impatience killed him.
It's a tragic miscalculation. Patience isn't just about passive waiting. It's about exquisite timing. And when you combine that precise timing with the application of fear, you achieve maximum strategic efficiency.
Let's talk about fear.
The text brings in an incredibly dark, extreme example to illustrate the mechanics of fear. Vlad the Impaler, the historical Dracula. Vlad is facing a massive invading Islamic army led by Muhammad II. Vlad's forces are vastly, comically outnumbered. He cannot win a traditional kinetic battle. It's mathematically impossible.
So he doesn't fight one. He changes the game from physics to psychology. Instead of deploying troops, he impales 20,000 traitors, criminals, and previously captured enemies on massive wooden stakes outside his city walls.
Think about the sensory reality of that for a moment. When the invading Ottoman army arrives, expecting a standard siege, they don't see an army. They see a literal miles-long forest of rotting corpses. The smell, the visual horror, the sheer, unimaginable psychological terror simply breaks the human brain.
It's just too much.
The amygdala hijacks the prefrontal cortex of every soldier in that invading force. The capacity for strategic military thought evaporates. Their will to fight is entirely shattered. The invasion halts, the army refuses to advance, and they turn around and go home.
Now, obviously, that is an extreme, gruesome, historical reality. We aren't suggesting you do that. But if we distill the underlying mechanical truth of what Vlad did, fear is the ultimate tool of efficiency.
Yes.
Vlad didn't lose a single soldier in that specific encounter. If you can terrify the competition before the match even starts, whether through cultivating a flawless, ruthless reputation, displaying an overwhelming show of preparation in a meeting, or demonstrating absolute unblinking resolve, you don't even have to throw a punch. The enemy defeats themselves in their own mind.
Exactly. And the text pairs this concept of fear with a profound historical insight into the manipulation of time, something it calls colored people time, or CPT.
I really want to dig into this because it's a concept that is often treated as a cultural stereotype, but the text frames it as a brilliant mechanical strategy of resistance. It describes how originally, in the antebellum American South, this was a form of quiet, highly calculated sabotage by enslaved people.
Yes. If you are enslaved, you have no physical weapons, you have no legal rights, you do not control your environment or your own body. The only resource you have left that the master cannot fully, instantaneously control is the tempo of your labor.
The speed at which you work.
Right. The text explains that enslaved people would deliberately, subtly slow their work pace. They would misunderstand instructions just enough to cause delays. They were using time to frustrate their masters, to disrupt the economic engine of the plantation, and to exert a tiny, maddening sliver of control. It was the weaponization of the pause.
I like to compare this kind of strategic patience to shorting a stock in finance. When you short a stock, you are betting against a company. You borrow shares, sell them, and then you wait for the company's value to drop so you can buy them back cheaper and pocket the difference.
That's a great way to look at it.
But your entire profit relies entirely on your ability to hold your nerve while the market fluctuates. You have to wait for the other side to crash. You are weaponizing the delay.
That's a brilliant modern parallel. By refusing to rush, by forcing the opponent to wait, you dictate the psychological tempo of the engagement. The person who is in a hurry, who needs immediate resolution, is the person who makes mistakes. They get sloppy. The person who is comfortable in the agonizing silence, who is comfortable in the delay, holds all the power.
Think about how you can implement that today. You are in a high-pressure situation. Let's say it's a hostile meeting, or you're caught in an aggressive, emotionally charged email chain. The biological instinct is to fire back immediately, to match their speed, to defend yourself, to clear your name. But what if you wait.
Just let it sit.
What if you enforce a massive pause? You let them sweat in the silence. You force them to wonder why you aren't reacting. Are you gathering evidence? Are you ignoring them because they are beneath you? You let their own paranoia fill the silence. You short their emotional stock.
It is incredibly effective, but here is the catch. to maintain that coiled spring patience, to short that stock without panicking, and to withstand the fear tactics and pressures of others, the individual executing the strategy must be forged in absolute fire.
You can't be fragile.
No, you cannot execute a high-level psychological waiting game if you are internally soft, easily rattled, or desperate for approval.
Which brings us to the internal work: forging the self, discipline, pain, and environment. You have to build a titanium machine before you can race it. Truth's LXE3 through LXE8 are absolutely unsparing on this topic. Hannibal says, test yourself with fire, ice, sand, and sea before your enemies do. You have to deliberately inoculate yourself against hardship.
He states it plainly in Truth LXE4. Pain is only weakness leaving the body. Now, that phrase has become a bit of a bumper sticker cliche, but the underlying mechanical concept is vital. It is the idea that your endeavor must exceed your environment. Your internal discipline must be stronger, more rigid, and more demanding than the external chaos of the world around you.
The text anchors this with some heavy modern examples. Look at Mike Tyson. Tyson is at the peak of his career, and then he goes to prison for 4 years. For most people, that is a devastating, life-ending defeat. You rot in a cell.
Right.
But the source text points out that Tyson turned that small concrete box into a monastic forge. He didn't just lift weights. He rebuilt his internal architecture. He read Machiavelli, he read Tolstoy, he studied philosophy, he studied the mechanics of anger management. He used the confinement to wire neuroplasticity into a brain that had previously only known reaction. He used the extreme restriction of prison to become a more expansive thinker, and he came back to win his titles.
Or look at the example of Robert Church. Born into slavery in the American South, he survives the Civil War only to enter the horrific, violent, racially oppressive environment of the post-war South in Memphis.
A terrible environment.
The external environment is designed to keep him impoverished and terrified. But his internal endeavor exceeds that environment. He uses discipline, terrifying patience, and strategic real estate investments during the yellow fever epidemic, when everyone else was fleeing in panic, to become the region's first Black millionaire.
And we see the literal manifestation of this in Hannibal's own life during the crossing of the Alps. His massive army is moving through freezing, treacherous mountains. Men and animals are dying of frostbite, and suddenly they find their narrow mountain path completely blocked by a massive, seemingly immovable boulder.
Just a giant rock blocking everything.
They can't go around it. The drop-off is too sheer. They can't turn back. The winter will kill them.
It is a moment of absolute paralyzing despair for the army.
But Hannibal's response is legendary. If we can't find a way, we will make a way.
Right. He doesn't panic. He doesn't pray for a miracle. He gets analytical. He looks at the rock not as a dead end, but as a physics problem. He orders his freezing men to chop down whatever scrub trees they can find and build a massive raging bonfire directly around and on top of the boulder. They heat the rock for hours until it is literally glowing white hot.
Then what?
Then he orders them to take their rations of cold, sour wine, essentially vinegar, and pour it all over the superheated stone. The extreme, sudden thermal shock causes the chemical structure of the rock to fracture and shatter. He used chemistry to overcome an impossible geographical obstacle.
Okay, I have to stop and push back here again, because while that story is amazing, there is a very dangerous psychological trap in this line of thinking. Does pain always make you stronger?
It's a fair point.
We have a massive tendency in our modern culture to romanticize trauma. We act like surviving something terrible, abuse, bankruptcy, a horrific accident, automatically gives you superpowers. We put it on Instagram. But the biological and psychological truth is sometimes pain just breaks people. Sometimes a boulder just crushes you. Sometimes trauma just leaves you traumatized and dysfunctional.
That is a crucial, vital distinction. And to be fair, the text actually addresses the nuance here if you look closely. It is not the raw pain itself that teaches or strengthens. Pain is just sensory data. It's just tissue damage. What teaches is the active discipline and the reflection upon that pain.
Ah, I see.
It's the difference between distress, which destroys you, and eustress, which is controlled stress that builds capacity, like tearing a muscle in the gym so it grows back larger. Hannibal talks about how a first taste of defeat, though bitter, goes far to prepare your palate for future feasts.
So it's the processing of the defeat. It's the cold, clinical analysis of why you lost, and the disciplined correction of the error that makes you stronger. Just suffering in silence without reflection is utterly useless. It's just misery.
Precisely. It's what the text defines as warriorhood, the specific combination of intense focus, relentless determination, and an honorable code. It's taking the raw, chaotic energy of pain and actively forcing it into a strategic mold.
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. We have mapped the enemy's pillars, we have set the traps with theatrical deception, we have coiled the spring with weaponized patience, and we have forged our own minds in the fire of reflection. All of this meticulous preparation inevitably leads to the climax, the strike, the victory. But most importantly, it leads to the aftermath.
The endgame.
Right. How does a master strategist handle the endgame? Because winning the fight is only half the problem.
This is exactly where the vast majority of leaders, CEOs, and politicians fail completely. They win the war, but they are utterly incapable of managing the peace. Truths, X and X to XLI, govern Hannibal's rigid approach to the endgame. He states that war should be swift, but peace should be swifter, and he lays down a golden rule. Never let the peace cost more than the war.
Meaning, don't win a battle if the cost of holding the new territory bankrupts your empire. If you launch a hostile takeover and destroy your corporate competitor, but you ruin your own public reputation, alienate your staff, and exhaust all your operational capital in the process, you haven't really won.
You just bought a graveyard.
Exactly. Truth X and Thakal warns explicitly. Waste is worse than war. Never burn a field that may one day feed your own sons.
It's a profound argument against the emotional indulgence of total scorched earth destruction. You have to leave some infrastructure standing to build your tomorrow on. And this ties deeply into how a true strategist processes the concept of vengeance. Truths 53 through 58 explore revenge. Hannibal absolutely acknowledges the deep human desire for it. He writes, "Revenge demands a long blade and a longer memory."
The source material references Alexandre Dumas's classic novel, The Count of Monte Cristo, to illustrate this. Edmond Dantes is framed by jealous rivals and thrown into a horrific island prison for 15 years.
A long time to sit in a cell.
He doesn't just sit there chipping away at the stone wall in a blind rage. He finds an old priest in the next cell, and he spends those 15 agonizing years educating himself. He learns languages, advanced mathematics, science, economics, and strategy.
He prepares.
When he finally escapes and claims a hidden fortune, he doesn't just run back to Paris and stab the men who framed him in a locale. That would be hot-blooded and short-sighted. Instead, he spends his massive fortune meticulously, systematically over a period of years, dismantling their lives, their finances, their reputations, and their sanity. He doesn't rush. He lets the wine of revenge ferment.
It is the ultimate execution of the long blade. But, and this is the absolute genius pivot of Hannibal's philosophy, he contrasts that cold execution of vengeance with truth XLV. Shame your enemies with your mercy.
Mercy.
Yes. This is perhaps his most brilliant, sophisticated psychological tactic. True power isn't just having the physical strength or the financial resources to close your fist and crush someone into dust. True power is possessing the terrifying restraint and wisdom to know exactly when to open that fist and let them breathe.
The text details how Hannibal, after completely slaughtering a Roman army on the field, would often gather the surviving Allied prisoners. These were soldiers from various Italian cities who had been forced by treaties to fight for Rome. Instead of executing them, which was standard practice, or selling them into slavery, he would address them, tell them he had no quarrel with them, and set them free. He would let them walk home.
Think about the psychological impact of that.
They would return to their respective cities, spreading the incredible, confusing word of Hannibal's mercy.
And ironically, this single act of compassion deeply structurally weakened Rome's grip on its allies. Because Rome maintained its empire through the threat of brutal violence. By showing mercy, Hannibal stripped away the fear that Rome relied on to keep those cities in line. He showed them an alternative to Roman tyranny.
Sun Tzu advises the exact same mechanical principle. Always leave a golden bridge for your enemy to retreat across. If you surround an enemy completely, and they think they are definitively going to die, they will fight you with a psychotic desperation that will cost you massive casualties. But if you offer them mercy, if you leave a crack in the door, their brain will seek survival. They will take the bridge, and the fight ends with zero cost to you.
So I have to ask, based on everything we've discussed about deception and mapping pillars, is Hannibal's mercy actually genuine human compassion? Or is it just the ultimate, most humiliating, most highly effective psychological weapon you can deploy against a rival? By sparing them, you prove your absolute godlike superiority over their fate, and you infect their own ranks with doubt and gratitude toward you.
Honestly, it's the ultimate weapon. You aren't just beating their bodies, you are conquering their minds and recruiting their souls. It's breathtakingly manipulative.
And that duality compassion as a weapon is the essence of his genius. If we step back and distill this vast array of ancient strategies from the 99 truths, we can synthesize them into what the text cleanly calls the 4 A's.
The 4 A's.
First, anticipate the enemy's moves. Know their 4 pillars so deeply that you can map their internal algorithm before they even act. Second, adapt to the changing environment. Be the drunken man. Use the friction of the rock in the bowl. Mold yourself to the terrain. Third, achieve the victory graciously. Use the paralyzing efficiency of fear to win without fighting, and use the golden bridge of mercy for ultimate post-war control. And fourth, advance immediately to the next challenge while the enemy is still recovering from the illusion.
Don't rest on your laurels. The second you get comfortable, you become the lethargic fish. You must continually advance. We really hope this deep dive has shown you that these ancient blood-soaked truths aren't just history lessons. They're profoundly applicable mechanics for everyday life. They ensure you aren't played for a fool by your environment, manipulated by digital algorithms, or crushed by your corporate rivals.
Because knowledge is only valuable when it is deeply understood and aggressively applied. The underlying dynamics of human power, the neuroscience of fear, the leverage of patience, and the architecture of deception haven't changed a single degree since the days of Carthage. Only the tools and the uniforms have changed.
Which brings me to a final, lingering thought. Something the text circles around but leaves for us to ponder on our own. We started this deep dive talking about a game of 4D chess, where 51% of the game is mental. We established, through Hannibal's own words and the analogy of the tropical fish, that we are truly shaped, driven, and defined by the friction of our enemies. The enemy is the rock that forces us to evolve and become excellent. But if that mechanical truth holds up, what happens to a conqueror when they finally win?
That is the ultimate tragic paradox of the apex predator.
Think about it. If your enemy gives your life its entire structure, its daily discipline, and its overarching purpose, if your entire identity since you were a 9-year-old boy in a temple is forged in a blood oath against Rome, does achieving total victory actually mean losing the very thing that made you great? If you finally remove the rock from the bowl, do you just slowly go back to sleep and die? It's something for you to chew on the next time you are grinding toward a goal and you finally crush it. What do you do on the morning after total victory? When the war is over, who are you?
A profound psychological question to end on. Stay sharp out there, continually question your own assumptions, map your own pillars, and remember to always look at the board from all angles.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. Keep coiled in that spring, hold your nerve, and we'll catch you next time.